Good morning, welcome to Morning Outlook. This is Kim speaking on Tuesday the 15th of May. So I'm starting off with the euro dollar. I must say that these markets today are not the clearest, that's for sure. And we start off with one that, well, it looked like it was going to potentially, I was erring more bullishness. There is this really indecisive sort of price action going on maybe now, but certainly, as I said yesterday, the sentiment's become a sort of this sort of short-term or mid-term, near-term, whatever you want to call it, bounce that we've seen, this softening in the dollar for a few days. The question is, are we going to see a bit more of a bounce? And there still is a potential bounce to continue here, but we have broken the sort of trend lines I'd drawn on. Well, it's clear on the 60-minute actually, although you can see this trend line here. It did break through yesterday in the end. I mean, I was very much yesterday looking, and I took a trade and got a stop out, and finally got into another trade and got a winning trade. But as it came back to that daily pivot, but where we're sitting now is where it's moved all the way down to its weekly pivot. And the question is here: is it going to bounce back up towards the daily? Good probability. I say possibility. Probability there is reasonable, but what then? Are we going to continue, and am I going to need to move my trend line across to these lows, or is it going to just sort of bounce into that and fail? There's not a great deal of pips in there. 25 pips where we're sitting. 25, well, maybe 25 pips ish. Where we're sitting at the moment back towards that daily pivot, so there's some potential, but we'll just probably need to wait post 8 o'clock and see what the price action is like. There is of course a trend line coming down across the highs here, which I haven't put on now, but it's on the edge of breaking that by the looks of things anyway. So there is that potential that it could just continue here. I mean, it was good to get that weekly pivot ticked off. Now, if it happened yesterday, it would earlier on yesterday when I was looking at it, I think it could have done. Well, it certainly could have done the dailies and bounced and stayed above it. Sorry, it couldn't do the weekly pivot there, but it's statistically it's hit some things. Maybe we could see more of a push up there, but it certainly has got a slightly higher probability of going up than down, although there is a conflict which spoils the trade altogether there, pretty much. Now, cable, look at this. I mean, talk about chop. It's just come back. It's just back in range. You could draw a line through that. There's a pivotal line where that, funny enough, where the monthly S1 sitting is pretty much the pivot level in terms of where price is moving at the moment. In fact, you can't really see on this 4-hourly, it's too flat there, but I mean, there was all sorts of things going on yesterday. We've seen these higher lows come through, higher highs coming through over Friday and into Monday, but we've broken that trend line that would have been across the lows there, and we put a lower high in, and that sort of confirmed. Already caught the daily pivot here, so there is not that target. Can I just check actually whilst haven't actually already caught the daily pivot on the euro, have we? That would be so change the picture quite a bit. I don't think we have, no, because it's above the top there. It's taken a bit of time to load here. No, it certainly hasn't. I didn't think we had, but sometimes you miss these things. There we go. So this has actually been hit. So the chance of it pushing up possibly slightly, well, it hasn't got the probability sitting there of it drawing back, but if the euro is pushing up there, well, it may just signify a slightly softer dollar. Maybe the pound's an easier sell point. It hasn't actually caught the weekly pivot here yet, so that's not actually been quite caught on this by this broker anyway. Chances of a rollover potential, yes. As I said yesterday, sentiment is a bit mixed, and it's starting to get a bit mixed on some of these currencies. It's softening on the pound until it's bullishness, and well, ironically, the pound's actually starting to look a bit more bullish, or had done for a couple of days. But anyway, so it could be just more of the same here, unfortunately. Now there is some key news out today which could well affect it. We've got the employment data coming out today, which is unusual, normally on a Wednesday, but anyway, it's out on a Tuesday. We've got the average earnings, which is the most important figure coming out there. at 9:30. Now that could be a bit of a continuation of Thursday's price action in terms of a sell-off if it comes in particularly low, because it would suggest there's less of a need for interest rate increases. If that starts to push over the 2.7 area, maybe it will breathe some more life in the upside of the pound. I should mention also that 130, which will affect the pound and the euro, we've got that the core retail sales coming out from the US. Now these figures are starting to get a little bit more weighting again. It's often a bit of a choppy old one anyway, but they want to see consumer spending, as we do in the UK. Both UK and US economies are very driven by retail sales, and the consumer-led economies, as opposed to export and someone else's consumer buying, as in the likes of Germany and lots of Europe. So we do need to see, it would be good to see some positive numbers coming in from there, and now that again could change the US dollar at come 130. So there's a couple of figures. There is one other figure I should have mentioned when I was looking at the euro as well. There at 10 o'clock there's the flash GDP coming out, which is not much of a mover, but the German economic sentiment can sometimes give a little kicker. So there is some data coming out, but not massive. More so for there is some key data for the pound and maybe the US dollar this afternoon. Right, so pushing on then, indecisive pound, but that may be cleared up at 9:30, and it's well worth waiting to 9:30 before taking trades on that, I would suggest, unless you're going to be deep in the money, or you are already in the money. Okay, dollar yen sitting here bouncing along this trend line. It's pushed up again this morning. It still hasn't hit that daily 200. I just want it to hit. I'm going to redraw the 200 if it doesn't move up there soon. But looks like it may push up towards that way, and the monthly R1 at some point. We are sort of triple top territory. It's the last top didn't quite make the first top, and this top hasn't quite made the last top. Now there is the potential push in there, but yeah, of course the pivots are getting in the way here, so we're into the weekly R1s at the moment. But they're looking a lot through much of this market. It does have the potential to push up some more for sure. Now what we're seeing here though on the hourlies, and what we may have to deal with this morning, first thing is maybe a bit of a retrace. It's put a shooting star in on this hourly here, may just suggest a bit of weakness coming through into those highs, and it may be just be worth watching if you're looking to get long for maybe a bigger retrace. It has got an untouched daily pivot, quite a few pips away at the moment. It's about 45 pips away, 35 pips away, beg your pardon. So it's got a bit of a pullback necessary to get to that level, but it'd be worth judging it if any retracements to the 6021 if you wanted to be a buyer, but certainly won't be buying at this point. But again, it's not really a clear one for this morning. Don't overly like the sell point, although we do have the daily pivot below. The momentum to me seems to be to the upside. Aussie dollar. Now the Aussie minutes came out overnight, didn't really give us any surprises there. This is still looking weak. I keep on referring back to the retail sentiment, and it is still very bullish, and so long as that stays bullish, I think it puts a lid to some degree on what we're seeing here, and it may just stifle it. It could still roll over. We're sitting here really on the weekly pivot at the moment, and again we put lower highs, lower lows in a bit more pronounced, and it didn't make new highs on at all yesterday, whereas the other markets pitched up a little bit and made new highs. The Aussie didn't quite follow suit, very flat for the day, and then eventually rolled, and it's now ticked that box of the weekly pivot. So again, there's another one sitting either on or close to its weekly pivot, and it's just whether or not these markets, same sort of pattern as the euro and the pound there, it's whether or not these can actually push up. But as I say, looking weak. There was no, as I say, no surprises in the minutes, but nothing absolutely clear on that. It may be more downside. Canadian dollar, the word chop and tight ranges comes to mind. Yesterday you can see the range pretty small there, not really doing too much. It's best kept out of when it's like this. The best times are always when it's trending. When it's getting choppy like this, it just draws people in. The bigger spread from spread betting companies where they'd like to put a nice 3 pip spread on there does you in quite nicely because the ranges are tighter. It eats up your potential. Here it's, I mean, if you got in from the divergence last week, that's fine. It's moving quite nicely and you should be up nicely. But if you're not and you're just looking to intraday trade this, I would suggest it's erring on the upside. High lows coming through there. It's very difficult in terms of what's really happening here. The potential all the time with this oil situation with Iran in the Middle East is that oil prices could go up. That could in turn bring the Canadian dollar down here against the US dollar. So it hasn't yet got up to that weekly pivot potential. Statistically it could well do so, but not the easiest one, and I should be avoiding it once again. So it doesn't really changes that. So that's pretty much it for me. Nothing else to mention on that. As I say, the news I've mentioned. Have a great day. Bye for now.